Savvy Central Radio, drawing out the best from our guests, with host Christina Nichman.
Savvy Central Radio is proud to present a live interactive series featuring a new mix to business networking and interviews. Our first event will take place Saturday, April 18th from 12 noon to 3 p.m. You'll not want to miss our first guest, Bryn Johnson. Our interview question portion of the event will be concluded by a business networking gathering of light fare and cocktails, where you'll be able to meet new and exciting like-minded business owners like yourself. To find out more, book your free ticket today at bit.ly/savvy event. That's bit.ly/savvy event. Hello everyone, and welcome to Savvy Central Radio. This is your host, Christina Nichman. Each week on Savvy, we host successful individuals and business owners, inviting them to share their dreams, stories, wisdom, and lessons learned in their field of business. Our guest today is comedian Rick Garrett. For anyone who's been around Rick for any amount of time, you can't help but know that Rick always has a smile and a hearty laugh to share with the world. A professional musician for over 30 years, Rick took a chance on comedy and started a story that is still being written. Rick's comedy draws from life experiences as an emergency service worker, musician, and dealing with personal stories of recovery. Today, Rick shares his story and how it's never too late to start over. To find out more about Rick, visit his website at rickgarrett.net. Hi, Rick. Welcome to Savvy Central Radio. How are you?
I'm good, Christina. How are you today?
I'm doing awesome. I'm excited to have you out because it's interesting. I heard a little bit about your story before we got started, and a lot of people in our audience have either told me before or after the interviews, and past guests have told me that they launched their second career because they felt a need to be more fulfilled. And you yourself launched a new career as a professional stand-up comedian after the age of 55. How did that all come about for you?
Well, I've always been interested in stand-up comedy, and I've been a fan of a lot of the classic comedians out of the 1950s and even before, like George Burns, Bob Newhart, Jack Benny, Bob Hope. And I've always wanted to try it, and I saw an ad in the local newspaper for a stand-up comedy contest. And actually, my first thought was I would kind of be a cinch at it because I've been a professional musician since 1974. So I entered the contest, and I wrote my set, which was our first time doing comedy. We had to bring a 5-minute set. And I pulled up in the parking lot, and suddenly I got the worst stage fright I've ever got in my life. And I told my wife, I'm not sure I can do this. And she said, well, you've always told me you'll never know till you try. So I got up on stage and actually ended up winning the contest my first time out, which was pretty amazing. And about 30 seconds into the set, I got 3 or 4 really good laughs from the audience, and I kind of knew I had found a new home. But it was really difficult because having been a musician, I'd always been on stage with some kind of a barrier between me and the audience, like a guitar or a piano. There was something physical between me and the audience. And suddenly I was up there with nothing but me and my thoughts. And that was pretty terrifying, actually.
Wow, that's interesting, Rick, because I went to school of performing arts and I was a musician all through my 20s and teens, and I performed a lot, and I was never as scared as when I first started doing live presentations, where now I'm a speaker, and it's a whole new genre when there's nothing between you and the audience, you speaking to them, nothing, well, for me, I was in an orchestra because I was a violinist, so there was a whole bunch of people between me and the audience. So yeah, I totally can relate to how you must have been feeling when you first started.
It was really interesting, and stand-up comedy is not really getting jokes out of a joke book, but you're kind of bearing your soul because you talk about your relationships and the humor you find in everyday life. Mm-hmm. So you actually are revealing yourself to an audience, and most musicians, unless you're a songwriter and you only play your own music, you're playing somebody else's songs. Mm-hmm. So you're not necessarily throwing all of yourself out there.
That's a unique understanding. I never thought of it that way, but it's true. And I noticed a lot of comedians I go watch, some I'm really interested in, like Russell Peters is a big favorite of mine.
Oh, absolutely.
You like him, right? He's awesome. Yeah. But I noticed they often talk about their personal experiences and like how how vulnerable is that you've got to lay down your soul in front of people? That's really intense.
It is. And some of the things we find humor in, and my part of my real working career was I was a paramedic. So I developed kind of a dark sense of humor as a way of dealing with the death and pain that I saw on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. And I had a really interesting upbringing. I spent a fair amount of time in foster homes and adoptive situations, some that were not optimal, some that were not real good. Mm-hmm. And I think laughing really helped me cope with that.
Wow, yeah, I can totally see that. For me, my blessing, I came from a violent background as a kid. Thank God I wasn't shuffled from house to house. We had one family household until our parents divorced, but it was violent at times, and what saved my butt was really music. It was such a blessing, and it's great to know that there's a number of channels that people can use, whether it be humor or music or arts, that can pull you through a difficult time. For you, what's been your greatest passion and why that propels you forward to use humor, music, storytelling, and entertaining folks across the nation?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. I think my great passion is to help other people find their passion. A lot of that comes from my adoptive father. We didn't have an awful relationship, but we didn't have a great relationship. Especially as I entered my teenage years. My dad was kind of a workaholic. He was a workaholic. And so never had time to come to any ball games or band concerts or anything like that. And would always tell me, when I retire, we'll have time to do these things. And I was really looking forward to that. And my father retired in the month of December, and 2 weeks later found out he had a very aggressive terminal cancer, and just a few weeks later was dead.
Wow.
That was probably the one defining moment in my life where I realized my own mortality. And I could work 30 years or 40 years or 50 years in a job that I absolutely hated and drop dead the day after I retired. So I just determined I wasn't going to do that. I was going to do the things that I was passionate about. And if it meant that I would never live in a big fancy home or, dine in the finest restaurants or even have a lot of financial security, it's worth it to me, because I think when my time comes, whether it's tomorrow or 20 years from now, I hope I can go out saying I lived my life doing what I love to do. And I hope that I can inspire others to do that too.
That is such a great life lesson learned, because I had a good friend of mine tell me a number of years ago that he had the same similar experience as you. His dad, you know how it is these days, to keep a roof, and a pretty nice roof, over your kid's head, and to put them into nice events after school, you have to work. Your husband and wife both have to go to work and work your buns off. And he said he always asked his dad, let's go to a ball game, let's play ball, let's go out together. And his dad was always like, tomorrow, I'm working. And tomorrow never came. Now he's just as busy running two businesses. And there's a little bit of resentment and unhappiness about that they never got to spend time together. And your kids are only your kids for such a short period of time. Once it's over, it's over. And so it's such a great lesson learned that, your life here is limited. It's not unlimited. And you only have a specific amount of time. You don't want to be on your deathbed going, I wish I had spent more time with my kids, or I wish I had done XYZ. That's
right. There's a country song that was written a few years ago, and I cannot remember who sang it, but the gist of the song is nobody on their deathbed says, I wish I had a bigger house, or I wish I had a better car. We mourn for the opportunities to spend time with people that we love and to influence other people that we never took.
Yeah, that is totally awesome, Rick. An upcoming guest of ours was asked the question, if you had 6 months to live, how would you live today? And that is such a powerful question to ask, because I bet if all of us knew we only had just 6 months and that's it, you're out of here, I bet most of us, our actions and our life would change drastically.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think to some degree, our culture has kind of fostered this idea we don't think about death. It's always way out there in the future. Partly because of some of the jobs I've had, I was forced to deal with death on usually a daily basis. So that's really brought it to the forefront for me. I also spent a good amount of years in professional ministry, and so often dealt with grieving families. And the hardest part about grief, I found, is not mourning the loss of the life of somebody you love, but mourning the lost opportunities that you might have had. I think that's the hardest part of grief there is.
Wow, and that brings to mind for me, my grandma died many years ago, and one cousin in particular was super distraught, and I was like, well, you never came to visit her when she was alive. Why are you so upset now? And that's probably it. He probably was remembering that it's over.
Exactly. Well, this was supposed to be a comedy interview, and it suddenly took a fairly dark and serious turn. But that's true. I mean, I think in our society, we all hope that there is something better on the other side.
Yeah.
But the fact is, this life is all that. I'm not saying there's nothing out there. I don't want to come across that. But when your father, parent, wife, loved one passes away, you may get to see them on the other side. I don't know for sure. But the fact is, that's the last time on this earth you're going to get to have to spend with them.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting we mentioned this because early in my 20s, I remember the idea of thinking about being 40. Oh my, they're so ancient. And, even as a teenager, someone 20 is ancient. And it's that same idea that, time is endless and you have all the time in the world. And then now I'm 45 and I'm thinking, whoa, I can see 60 now.
Just think how I feel.
It probably goes a bit faster each year.
It does. It absolutely. My dad said that the older you get, the time passes quicker, and I really did not believe that, but it's true.
Why do you think that's so, actually?
I don't know. Boy, that's a great question. Nobody's ever asked me. I'm going to have to give that some thought.
Yeah. I'm guessing it's because I think we start to realize how close our mortality is and that our time is short, and then we start getting into high gear, and then, of course, life goes quicker and quicker.
Absolutely. That's a great point.
So along your journey to becoming a stand-up comedian, what's been some of your hugest challenges on this journey, and how did you overcome them?
Well, probably the biggest challenge for me was finding my target audience, because not every comedian is suited for every audience. I work clean, kind of PG rated. I mean, I'm not like candy clean, but so I'm not a good fit for a lot of bar shows and some of the comedy clubs and so on. And because I'm older, because I write about my life, my subject matter is a little bit different. So, starting out, I worked some in comedy clubs and did a lot of bar shows, and they were fun. But the last couple of years, I've been doing a lot of lodges like Moose and Elks and VFWs and theaters. I love theater shows that typically draw an older audience that appreciates clean humor. That's been worked out really, really well for me. Probably the biggest challenge has been revealing parts of myself through my comedy. I've kind of had to dig deep and face kind of my own personal demons. And it's been very therapeutic.
That's cool. That's great to know that. I mean, for me, what's been therapeutic, because I'm not getting up there telling everyone my stuff. Well, actually, sometimes I do on my show, but not as deeply as a comedian, I don't think. But what's been a big help in bearing my soul is journaling. And wow, some of the stuff that gets on the paper, you're like, whoa, didn't know that was in there.
Yeah, and I write my comedy out before I ever take it on stage, and sometimes you'll get in this mode when you're writing that the pen almost becomes automatic, and stuff just kind of starts flowing out. So that, just kind of revealing part of myself to the public, because a lot of entertainers and a lot of ministers have, when I was in the ministry, I kind of had my public face and my private face. Not that I hid anything from the church, but that's just the way that kind of job works. And with comedy, it's kind of like, it's time to kind of put all that back and just be who I am.
Yeah. Yeah, I get you. I get you. Being that I worked in corporate finance for 20 years, you can imagine it's a very type A stressful environment. But it's interesting. I showed up for 20 years as a man on the job because a woman being soft or even nurturing in that environment was not acceptable. So I didn't realize until I stepped out of the corporate arena that I was actually showing up to work as a man, which is not who I am. And I actually like to be feminine and nurturing, but I left a lot of those parts of me out on a daily basis, and it took a toll on me, my personality, my body, my health, and it was awesome to come and find a place where I could be myself through Savvy.
That's a great story. And, we would hope that in 2015 America, we had bypassed a lot of those gender roles. But my wife also works in corporate finance, and I see that. That's very true.
Yeah. And it's hard not to bring it home. That's one thing that my partner brought to light for me when I would come home and I would act like the boss. And he's like, well, you take off your corporate hat. You're at home.
That's funny. It's really interesting that you mention nurturing part of your personality, because I think one of the things that is lacking in our society is that spirit of nurturing. We have become such a competitive society, whether it's business or sports, that we urge people to compete when I think we really should be nurturing them.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a huge difference between urging and nurturing, I think. There are elements of both in each, but they're different.
Yeah, one, the more like I'm going to sit here and help you and support you through making your own decision, and one is I'm going to kind of push you off the edge.
Right.
Where there might be a good time for both. And I don't know if you watch Star Trek.
Oh my gosh, yes.
But one of my favorite is the Voyager show, and a lot of people didn't like having a woman captain, and this particular captain, they did a good job of showing how you could be a leader, a nurturer, and be supportive in a female kind of way, feminine way, and still be a good leader. And it showed to me the perfect representation of what a good woman leader would be. And I thought, darn, I wish I could take that back into corporate, because that would have been a great way for women entrepreneurs and women leaders to behave in the world, because you can be a leader and be a woman.
That's right. And Captain Janeway was awesome.
Love her.
Huge Star Trek fan. I've got several bits about Star Trek that I do.
Ooh. What has been your greatest lesson learned so far? Now, you taught one before, which was really awesome, but is there anything else that stands out from your experiences that you could share with us?
Probably the best lesson that I learned, and this kind of comes from the way that I was raised up, being shuttled around a lot. I spent most of my life seeking approval. Put yourself in the mind of a child when a child is abused or hit or abandoned. The first thing a child thinks is, it's because I was not good enough. Mm-hmm. Was because there's something wrong with me. And so I spent most of my life, including my adult life, seeking the approval of others. When I started doing comedy, I found out not everybody's going to like my brand of humor, and not everybody is going to like me. And suddenly that was okay, because it was more important that I do something that I was passionate about and something that I believed in than that somebody liked me.
What got you to the point where you could make that switch? Because I'm sure some people are still in I still do it from time to time, the people-pleasing thing, where you want that acceptance. How did you get past that?
Boy, that's a great question. I think for me, it was the need to fill my passion, to fill that cup of my passion was greater than the need to be liked. I don't know why that happened, but it happened.
Perhaps wisdom along your journey, just where you got to. Yeah. Has there been anyone in particular, any role models that have really inspired you?
Oh, there have. I could obviously say Spock.
Yeah.
But I think we're talking about real life people. There are a few. This guy is probably the best known comedian you've not heard of. His name is Dave Dugan. Dave has been doing comedy for 35 or 40 years. Comedy Central, The Tonight Show, VH1, you name it. And Dave and I got to be friends 2 or 3 years ago when we kind of randomly got thrown on a show together. And Dave kind of took me under his wing And here was a guy that has pretty much done it all and made a very good living at it. And suddenly he's hanging out with a guy that's been doing it for a few months and is helping him write and helping him with his stage presence and so on. And that showed me that we're all just kind of the same. We're all following the same journey. So he was a guy that really, really helped me a lot.
Wow.
Early in my life, and this would be adopted, but my Uncle Bob, he passed away when I was fairly young. He was one of those fellas that lived his life living his passion. He had a lot of health issues and he died pretty young, but I kind of, pretty much everything I've become, I can trace the roots of that back to him.
Great to know, like, people like David, that even though they reach a certain status, that they are humble to say, hey, you're just like me and I can help you get, learn the ropes and such. I mean, during my transition into this new career, I've met some wonderful people that have taken their time and effort to show me things and help me out. And it's really humbling to know that, hey, you've gotten to a certain spot, but you're willing to give up some time and help me out.
It is absolutely, absolutely just so much appreciated.
Yeah. And at this moment, what would you say has been your greatest achievement in all that you've done, from your first career to now launching a new career?
Gosh, my greatest achievement. Well, at the top of it has got to be meeting my wife, who is just a fantastic person, but I had nothing to do with that. That kind of was fate. We were introduced by a mutual friend. I guess my greatest achievement has finally been getting comfortable in my own skin.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
I, had some addiction issues and had to have some treatment and had to have some help and all that junk of my childhood and so on. I'm in my late 50s and I still deal with that from time to time. I think maybe one of the other greatest achievements is simply getting the courage to deal with that.
Yeah, I think often people think I have to run to get to the other side, and it's really an ongoing journey. There's no such thing as, no matter what you succeed in, that it's over. There's always a better and greater you, and it doesn't end.
Absolutely. That's a great point. And, one other I would say is I've been really, really fortunate to help a few people that have struggled either with addiction or with some abusive situations and so on. And that's been a great blessing to me to use some of my experiences to try to help somebody else.
That's great. And going forward, what do you see as your grand vision for your stand-up comedy or anything else in your life coming up?
Well, I think my grand vision is probably to tell people that it's never too late to try something you've always wanted to try.
I love that.
Whether it's comedy or music or learning to read, try it. I had a fellow, my wife and I own a small music and art co-op in southern Indiana, and had a fella come in this past spring, 74 years old, had never had a musical instrument in his hand, and asked, do you know what a dulcimer is?
No.
A dulcimer is a traditional mountain music instrument from the American South. Asked if I could teach him to play music. And so I started giving him lessons, and at 74 years of age, he is playing like a champ, and it's been so incredible to see that transformation. At the end of our first lesson, he looked at me, his eyes were just lit up, and he said, I can do this. So I hope that I can urge people to try new things. And if you try it and it doesn't work out, I tried.
Yeah. And Rick, I just read scientific research that said that there used to be this saying, old dogs can't learn new tricks. Well, science is saying that's absolutely not true. Your brain continues to make neural pathways any time of your life that you're still breathing and kicking. So there's always a time to learn. You might not learn and take in the information as quickly as you did at 20, but it doesn't mean that you can't learn at any age and grow.
Absolutely.
Yay. So what, as we head on out here, would you like to leave the audience with any last piece of advice or words?
Sure. A couple of things. First of all, I would like to reiterate, if you want to try something new, just go try it. There are a wealth of resources out there with the internet. You can find a way to do something that you want to do. And my tagline for comedy is, life is too short to laugh quietly. So I would like to tell the listeners, laugh loud.
That's right.
Laugh heartily. Whatever you do, do it with all of your might.
Yep, no hiding because you only have one life on this planet.
Right.
And for people to find out more about you and hire you, how can they do that, Rick?
Sure. My website is Rick Garrett, RickGarrett.net. And you can also find me on Facebook. It's facebook.com/Rick Garrett Comedy.
Wow. Thank you so much. This has been a great conversation. I love the back and forth and the stuff we came up with is great. I know that it's going to help a lot of people out there. Thank you so much, Rick, for coming to Savvy Central Radio.
Oh, Christina, thank you so much. I've got a huge smile on my face.
Take care, Rick.
All right. We'll see you.
Savvy Central Radio is proud to present a live interactive series featuring a new mix to business networking and interviews. Our first event will take place Saturday, April 18th from 12 noon to 3 p.m. You'll not want to miss our first guest, Bryn Johnson. Our interview question portion of the event will be concluded by a business networking gathering of light fare and cocktails, where you'll be able to meet new and exciting like-minded business owners like yourself. To find out more, book your free ticket today at bit.ly/savvyevent. That's bit.ly/savvyevent.